Okay, so the number one mistake I've made in the past is that people forget to hit record and they have a great conversation and it's gone. But man, I can't thank you enough for making time to do this. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I'm meeting a celebrity.
Not quite, not quite. It's the other way around.
Yeah, I think I told someone today, in our group, Tanner.
Yeah.
So I told Tanner, I said, I pretty much talk to Curt every day, but I don't know him. Like I'd never met in person. And I think that's the wonderful thing about that ERG Zone app. And Rob has done a great thing, and Lizzie, and it's so great to compete against awesome people who are absolute warriors. And so it's great talking to you face to face for the first time.
I think we've spoken over the phone maybe once, but yeah, this is the
Right.
first time face to face. But
That's right.
yeah, it is interesting, getting to know some of these people just kind of strictly through rowing and strictly through fitness, but you don't, truly, know them. So this will be a fun conversation. It'll be good to kind of get to know you. It'll be good to kind of let you get to know me a little bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I have so many questions for you, but you're also aside from being a great athlete, you're a business owner and a dad and a family person.
Absolutely.
So
Yep. Yep.
you
Two
have
two girls, 11 and 9.
and one's a softball player. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I got a softball player. That's the older one. That's Emerson. So she's 11. My younger one is Addison. She's 9. She primarily plays soccer, and they both swim as well.
Okay. My brother's daughter is a terrific softball player, and she loves softball. And I think she's 12 now. Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
that's about the age where it starts to get pretty serious. My daughter Emerson, she's 10U right now. She's about to enter the 12U level right now, and that's where you start to see some of the girls really kind of the more serious ones take the step forward, where the less serious ones start to drop off, and it's a lot. There's a lot to it, and there's some long weekends, as I'm sure you're aware of, and
Yeah.
but it's fun. It's great to be outside. It's great to participate in a sport that's so much fun like that.
I was just going to intro to everyone where you're located.
Oh, I'm in Victoria, Minnesota is where I live. I grew up in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, and that's where my gym is. My gym is in Eden Prairie, Minnesota.
Okay. And I'm sure, I'm assuming it's cold 8 months of the year, 9 months of
The,
the
ma-
year.
the majority of the time, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So you got to cherish those summer months because they come and go really fast.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you could do some cold plunging, just jumping in some natural bodies of water.
Uh,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure, and you could do that probably all the way up until April, May. So yeah, so it's not always necessary to have the setup at the house.
Okay. Understood. Understood. And tell us a little bit about your gym. You have an awesome gym. I see it all the time. And I know you have a great community there that you've built. What year did you start your gym?
July 2014, so I'm coming up on 10 years here in the next couple of days, actually.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of a fun little milestone. But yeah, so it's called Excel Fitness, spelled with XCEL, kind of a play off of Excel Energy, which is the energy company that we have out here in Minnesota. So when
Okay.
trying to come up with the gym name, I was thinking Excel with an E, as we like to excel in fitness, that type of thing. But I thought that was just a little too generic. So thinking about it a little bit more, I came up with that little play on words. And it's a smaller footprint, but it kind of similar along the lines of like a Snap Fitness or Anytime Fitness. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that out in
Yeah.
Miami, but
Hmm.
both of those companies are headquartered here in Minnesota. Snap Fitness is one that I'm very familiar with. It's where I transitioned my career to once I left Lifetime. I'm sure we'll probably get into that at some point, but. So smaller footprint, but I wanted to distinguish it from those other types of smaller gyms, and I wanted to have more of an athletic bent to it. So we have the general gym area, which is great, similar to those other smaller footprints. But we also have a separate area that is geared more towards athletic training, which is a side of our business that we have really grown over the years. We've trained many different individual athletes, but we've come to train many different sports teams, notably Fox Jets swim team and also West Express swim team, both trained out of my location. So we built a great community, especially the early morning crew. That come and train along the same times that I do. Maybe not quite as early as I do, but they come a little bit later. And it's awesome to see, as I'm sure you can identify with this. It's fun to see relationships grow based off of something that you have created. People that would have never come across each other otherwise are coming across each other in this space that I created, and it's so fun to see those types of relationships grow and cultivate there.
Yeah, it's special. It's special watching it. We myself and my business partners, we also started in 2014, and I think the decade mark it's an important mark, and it shows a lot of you become a war veteran, or that's a little dramatic, but you certainly it humbles you, and you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about people, and hopefully best approaches dealing with all things. And, it's been fun. I mean, it's certainly been challenging. I would never say it's been easy. Thankfully, everyone works so hard, and the team is absolutely wonderful, and it's a blessing to be around caring, kind people who are trying to better the environment and the culture. That's big for us. That's kind of like our mark on things. Culture is everything, and people come there to be the best version of themselves, and hopefully we can add something to their journey on their way to that. So do you have one location now?
I have one location right now. Hoping to expand it sometime, hopefully in the near future here, but as of right now, it's just the one location. It's taken me a while to kind of get to the point where the idea of multiple locations is a reality, but I think we're closely kind of getting to that point now. So we're starting to look at that. We're starting to look at where another location or a couple of other locations might be good fits. The hard thing is that as you, I'm sure, have experienced, the real estate market, especially given the types of locations that my model fits into, they're all very full right now. Especially since the COVID time period, a lot of companies downgraded from regular offices and then retail down to what's known as flex spaces, and what my location fits into is more of a flex space, which is office and warehouse, and so it's all full here. So it's hard to find the spots. So I'm trying to be patient with that and kind of pick my spots and make sure that the next move is the right one. But that is the ultimate plan.
Okay. Awesome. How many people do you have on your team? Do you have sales, general managers, AGMs, trainers as well?
It's a little bit more. It's a little more simplistic than that. So all of my trainers, I have 8 personal trainers at my gym, and they're all independent contractors. So they all run their own businesses within my walls. So I kind of give them the freedom to do whatever they want to do. And some of the younger ones rely on me for assistance, rely on me for guidance and help and things of that nature. But some of the older, more seasoned ones, they don't really need much from me at all. They kind of run their own business. They are very successful at what they do, and they don't need my help. So I do have a manager, and she takes care of a lot of stuff for me. But for the most part, it's owner operator. So I have a full load when it comes to personal training, but then I also do a lot of the day-to-day stuff at the gym as well. So that's kind of the structure that we have. Okay.
And you're an early riser?
I am an early riser, yes, very early.
What time are you waking up?
I wake up every day at 1:45.
Okay. And you go to bed at what time?
I go to bed. It depends on what's going on. Depends if we have a softball game or a soccer game that's going on. As the girls are getting older, those games are getting later and later, which is getting more difficult. But we try to start the wind down process about 8 o'clock. It doesn't always work out that way, so I'm usually probably falling asleep around 9.
Okay. Okay, understood, understood. And
Not
your
ideal.
training, yeah, yeah, yeah. And how old are you?
41.
Yeah, so I used to do that. Yeah, I used to do that. And I realized, like, you know, friend to friend, if you allow me to say that, I did that for such a long period or large period of time in my life. I was thinking, one time I went to the doctor and he looked at all my blood work and I literally walked him through every single thing I did. And he said, there's only one thing that I could tell you that needs to be changed. And he goes, you need to sleep. And he goes, you're not sleeping and you've been doing this for a long time. And he said, if you change that for 3 months, you will feel 20 years younger and better. And he goes, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but when I started to shift that, because I was doing the same kind of schedule, and it's one of those things that I'm sure with family and business and all you do, it's incredibly hard, but it was, I just have to figure out how to get a half an hour in earlier, a half an hour in later, and do whatever it takes, because I started to think about, have you heard Matthew Walker wrote a book called Why We Sleep. Have you heard it?
I have not, no.
Well, you can skip the book and go right to Joe Rogan, and he was on Joe Rogan for I think about 2 hours, and it's an amazing podcast. And he basically gives you the cliff notes of the book, but he says one thing that I'll never forget. He said, "There's one statistic that you need to pay attention to, and if you have a family, if you have a business, if you have a relationship, and it's really important to you," he says, "the people who sleep the least die first." That's one stat that doesn't change across the board. It doesn't matter if you're a man, if you're a woman, what age you are. The people who sleep the least die first. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm winning that race. That's one I don't want to win. And then when we had our son, I was thinking, man, I got to be super careful and smarter with my sleep, And I know you're an incredibly hard worker, but just my share to you. But you're
No,
doing
I
amazing
appreciate
things.
that.
Yeah, of course, of course. I know you're doing amazing things there. And tell me about your journey and how you started in training and then how you ventured to your own business. Tell me about the early days.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I feel like every trainer they take one of two paths. I feel like every trainer either grew up an athlete and they've done it their whole lives. They were really good at it and they've just continued that athletic path and they've turned it into a career.
Right.
That was certainly part of the case for me, maybe. I was always athletic growing up, but then the other path was more mine, which is more of like a transformational type of a story.
Okay.
So when I was growing up, I was always a little bit more overweight. I was picked on, pretty heavily for being chubby. Those were the types of experiences that I had all through middle school, and not so much once I got into high school, but always very athletic, but always very insecure, shy, all that type of stuff that is associated with being overweight. When I became a senior in high school, I got kind of sick of it. And that's when I knew that it was time for me to do something about it. So at the time I was weighing probably about 230, something like that. I dropped about 60 pounds in 6 months, which was a lot of weight to lose in a short amount of time. I would never recommend doing what I did. I took things to pretty large extremes, not eating a whole lot, exercising a ton. But that transformation kind of led me to find a career in this. When it came time, so I went on to college. I have a degree in exercise science and a biomedical studies concentration, which is kind of the same thing as a minor. I originally thought that I was going to go on into physical therapy. I had an internship my junior year in physical therapy, and I absolutely hated it. It was the most miserable month that I had, in my school experience. And I think the main reason why, the main thing that I took away, and if I could encourage anybody, especially younger people that are thinking about going a certain direction with a career and they haven't decided yet, try to find something, try to find those outlets that allow you to experience those types of careers before you jump into it, because you're gonna find out that things are very different than what you thought they were. I had a good physical therapy experience when I was in high school. I broke my ankle. I did some rehab on it. I had a great experience. I worked with a great therapist, so I thought that would be a great path for me. I had a lot of fun with it. But then once I got into a regular physical therapy setting, I realized that when you're not working with strictly athletes and you're working with the general population, you're working with a lot of people that don't want to be there. You're working with a lot of people that they are forced to be in that physical therapy situation for one reason or another. They got into a car accident or they hurt themselves, whatever the case might be. And it was just a very negative experience. And maybe it's just a particularly bad month. This was in January. It was cold. It was dark. So maybe everybody's just kind of a little bit in a worse mood. Anyway. But I really realized that if and I'm susceptible to other people's emotions kind of dragging me down. So I would enter these environments, and I would leave feeling worse than when I got there. Because I was just around all these people that didn't want to be there. So that was an eye-opening experience, and I was thinking, okay, what the heck am I going to do now that I know that I don't want to get into physical therapy? So what I always had in the back of my mind was personal training also. So that's when I kind of jumped into that. And the key difference between physical therapy and personal training is, again, personal training, generally you deal with people that want to change. You deal with people that want to be there. You deal with people that are motivated. Maybe they don't necessarily know how to get there, but they want to get there. And that's just such a key difference in dealing with people. So I did that more or less straight out of college. I started at a Lifetime Fitness. It was actually Northwest Athletic Club at the time, and we got bought out by Lifetime about 6 months in. And then stayed there for about another year. Worked different areas. I was the metabolic specialist at that location. So I had a team of people underneath me there. So it was kind of neat to get a little bit of managerial and leadership experience at such a young age. I was only 22, 23 years old at the time. And at the time, Snap Fitness was brand new. One of our top trainers that we had there was not super excited about working for Lifetime. We all loved working for Northwest. Not a lot of us liked working for Lifetime. It was just a totally different structure. So he opened up around the 200th Snap Fitness ever in the entire country. So Snap Fitness was that new that it was the 200th store. So he opened that up in Minnetonka, and he took the top trainers with him. So he took 6 trainers with him, and I was lucky enough to be one of them. So I worked there as an independent contracting trainer, rebuilding my business basically from scratch there. Worked there for about 7 years, I believe. Took my career there about as far as I could, just numbers wise. You only have so many hours in the day that you can train, and so many people that you can see, and so once you get to that point where your schedule is full, and I always wanted to have a greater impact than what I had at the time. So the next logical step for me was to have my own location, whether it be within those franchises that we have here in Minnesota, or do my own thing, and have trainers that are working underneath me. That way my span of influence can be greater than just the people that I directly see. Now my influence can be the trainers that work with me, and then also just the general members that I have at my location. So that that's what I've done, and that's it's been, like I said, it's been coming up on 10 years now that we've had Excel, and it's been a great experience. It's I've always wanted to have as great of an impact as I possibly can with the limited resources that I have, and the limited voice that I have, and I'm trying to always expand that. And having other trainers working beside me, and also having that general membership base allows me to do that. So having as much access to all of those people as I can, and doing whatever I can to help whatever their process is, whether it's giving them a piece of equipment, or giving them advice, or putting different types of content online, whatever it is. There's the possibilities are limitless these days. As you know, it's certainly evolved over the last 10 years. So that's kind of that's how we got to where we are now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we certainly have a few things in common. I was also an overweight young man, and had some challenges very insecure, very low self-esteem, and wanted to change those things. So kudos to you for changing your path and then turning it around and helping other people, because that's the best way.
And having those types of experiences as a youngster, it's hard, and I'm 41 years old. I should be over that stuff by now, and for the most part, I am. But I can still remember some of those days like it was yesterday, and it's extremely impactful, and dealing with the amount of teenagers that I deal with now, I feel like having those experiences, I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason. And I feel like having those experiences coming up, I can now relate back to not only young people, but adults as well. Adults deal with that type of stuff, and they deal with insecurities, and they deal with things that they don't necessarily always talk to people about. But as you know, as trainers, we hear a lot of stuff. And being able to relate to people on that level is something that I think is very powerful, and I think it's something that's very effective, and something that has made me into not only a better trainer, but a better human being, and also a better husband and father, and certainly a more caring and compassionate. At least I try to be as caring and compassionate as I possibly can be. But those are definitely some tough times, but at the same time, I'm very, very grateful. It sounds weird to say, but I'm very grateful for going through it, and I'm very grateful for working myself through it and getting to this point where I can turn it around and hopefully help as many people as I can with that type of story.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome. You said I'm 41 years old. I should be over it. I'm about to be 48 in a couple weeks, and I'll tell you, you figure out, it's like anything, right? We deal with our stuff. We figure out tools or develop tools to deal with, what we try to manage in our head or emotionally. But with me, and I'll tell you, like, when I look in the mirror, I always see that young boy who's out of shape.
Mm-hmm.
That never goes away.
Yeah.
And that's, as we discussed, that's like the driver to, don't get complacent.
Yeah.
No, don't get complacent with your training, with your discipline and the way you eat, or, certainly the way you talk to people. Because I think sometimes the way, when you have a person that's a little bit condescending, off-putting, or negative, or not polite, they probably didn't suffer too much like that. Because if you have, you really don't want to talk to other people like that. Or you just have no control over your emotions, but that's another story altogether. So, yeah, it's good that, you experienced that, and I'll certainly never forget how it felt to be like that. I think that's a good reminder.
Oh, for sure. And in this industry, I think humility, and also just a sheer caring for people and for where people are at in their particular journey, I think is extremely important. There's times where I'll be talking to a member or a client or whatever, and maybe the topic of somebody, a member of the gym or somebody else outside the gym, whatever, the topic might come up, and I learned very early in my career to never really judge what you're looking at, and never really judge where people are, because you don't know anything about what you're looking at, and you don't know anything about what you're seeing. If you see somebody at the gym who they don't look like they know what they're doing, or they look out of place, and maybe they're 300 pounds. For all you know, they were maybe 400 pounds at one time, and they're 100 pounds down, and they're rocking and rolling. But you don't know that. All you know is that they look like they're 300 pounds now, and you wonder how they got there. So never judge what you're looking at. At least try not to. It's hard not to. I understand it, but you never know where people are, and it's very important to recognize that and have that degree of humility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. That's a good lesson for us. That's good. That's a good share. So with the business, Curt, two things. So I guess the first question is, what is the most challenging piece of the business that you deal with every day? And the second question would probably be, what do you wish, it's one thing to say, I'm glad I experienced all these things so I could, it helped me be the person I am today. But if there was something that you could have known going into it, and we could reverse the clock, what would that be? So the first thing is, what's the most challenging part of the business for you? And then What do you wish you knew when you started that you do know now, but you didn't know when you started?
The hardest part of the business, I would say is, kind of going back to that humility part is I don't think that what I do on a day-to-day basis is all that special. One of the things one of the advantages that I have over other people is I'm very disciplined and I'm very consistent. So in that, sometimes I have a hard time understanding why more people can't be that way. Sometimes you have a hard time understanding, and so you have a hard time not looking down on other people for not going as hard as they possibly can all the time. And it's easy for me to keep that in the framework of just fitness. Because that's basically my whole world. I don't have a ton of other interests. I work out, I train people, I run the gym, and then my only other interest outside of that is my family. I don't go on too many vacations. I don't travel. I don't do too many other things. So sometimes it's hard for me to relate to people and relate to some of the struggles that other people have. In terms of just going as hard as they can all the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's hard not to, and that comes from me not thinking that what I do is all of that special. And I really don't think it's all that special. I think that it's just consistency over time. There's no special tricks. There's no nothing along those lines. It's just discipline and consistency. That's it over a long period of time. And that's not a great answer for people that want shortcuts or for people that want the tricks or whatever, but that's the truth. That's the truth in my experience. That's what works for me. And I think it's very simple. I say this all the time. It's simple, but it's not easy. The concepts that we do on a daily basis, it's not rocket science. It's not very complicated things, but in that it's not easy to do. It's not easy to execute. So that's something that I have a hard time with sometimes. Sometimes I'm too hard on people, and I need to take a step back, and I need to give them a little bit more grace and a little bit more wiggle room to do things the way that they need to get them done, not necessarily do things the way that I would do it. And what's something that I wish I would have known going in? That's a good question. I wish I would have known that nothing that I had planned on the front end really happened. And in the beginning, I was a lot less flexible. In the beginning, when bad things would happen, I would get really angry or I'd get really upset, and I wouldn't just roll with it. Nowadays, as as a business owner, bad things happen almost every single day. And now, you just roll with it. There's only so much that's within your control, and there's only so much that you can do about all these little things that pop up on a daily basis. Now it's not a big deal. But back in the beginning, I wasted so much time and so much energy on just freaking out over things that really didn't matter. So I wish I could go back and tell myself that. And the funny thing is that, I'm trying to instill a lot of these lessons into my girls, and they're 9 and 11, and I'm just now grasping a lot of this stuff, and I'm by no means perfect. I still have my moments. So here I am thinking that if I can just hand this off to them, then they're going to be so far ahead of everybody else. But, parenting doesn't necessarily work that way. It's in one ear and out the other oftentimes. And I'm hoping that a lot of that stuff will, eventually stick. And I'm sure it will. I'm sure subconsciously it's there somehow.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But that's one of the biggest ones that I wish I would have known going in is nothing's going to go to plan, and that's okay. Everything's going to work out the way it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. That's certainly good advice and more good information. So thank you. I remember getting so uptight or having anxiety or getting just super frustrated or angry when we first started. Same. And now it's like I've realized the only person that's really hurting is me.
Yeah.
Like I'm if I hold on to something too long, or I become emotional, it's not going to put me in a position to have great success with the next challenge, which could be in 5 minutes. It could be in 10 minutes. So I learned that I have to be better. And on top of that, if I'm asking people to be better like that, I certainly have to be better like that. I can't lose my cool, because I think often, I had this conversation with someone yesterday. When something goes wrong, it's like on the floor in a class, members are also watching how you're going to respond. They're like, I wonder how he's going to handle this.
Right.
Because it's like, it's super interesting, right? It's like, someone's being crazy disrespectful. Well, that's their choice. Like, that's because of them. That's because of who they are. It's not because of who I am. Like, they chose to come with an approach and a perspective that's disrespectful. No matter what I say or do, they're not going to change who they are. That's who they are.
Right.
So I look at our team like they're all like superheroes, and they all have gifts. And I'm talking about outside of training. So someone may be a great listener, someone may be empathetic, someone may do a great job connecting. Someone may be just a great teacher, whatever it is. But with all their skills, they have to have a really high EQ and understand that there are only so many things that they can change. And their overall mission is, one, to create a great environment where people can train themselves the best way and the team can do their best work. That's like our job. Create an environment where people can do their best work. And number two, de-escalation of everything. Right. De-escalate all situations. Which,
absolutely,
as you know, that's easier said than done, but it is what it is,
Yeah. Well, and a couple of things along those lines is, you never know who's watching, and some of the more vocal people that have expressed the impact that I've had on their lives are people that I don't really interact with that much. They're not my own personal clients. They're not the people that I talk to for long periods of time. They're just regular members of the gym that just kind of see what I'm doing, and they'll make comments here and there, or they'll post something on social media or whatever the case might be. So they're always watching, and you never know what kind of an impact you're going to have on somebody, whether directly or indirectly. So it's very important to be the best that you can be. Yeah. At all times, and it's hard to do, and there's a lot of pressure associated with that, but I think it's a good pressure, and I think it's a type of pressure that really only makes you a better person. It doesn't make you a worse person in any regard.
For sure. So now let's, if you don't mind, segueing into the training. I'm super excited to talk about the training. So you're training a lot. You certainly. You weight train, strength train, and then you also do a lot of training on the Concept 2 pieces. So when did you start with the Concept 2 training? How long ago?
Let's see. I was still at my Snap location, so it must have been probably 2012-ish, something like that is when we got our first rower. Okay. It was back when I distinctly remember asking the owner of my gym to get one, and then he finally got one. And it was back when CrossFit was starting to kind of really take off, and it was getting a little bit more mainstream. So I was seeing more footage of what those guys were doing, and guys like Rich Froning, Dan Bailey, all those kind of old school CrossFit guys. Yeah. And at the time, it seemed like rowing was a big piece of their programming. I've been to one CrossFit class in my entire life. I don't really know a whole lot about what they do, from an internal perspective, I just have a peripheral perspective on what they do. So it seemed like it was programmed a lot. It seemed like they were throwing out a lot of rowing content. So I hear these guys with these wide lats, and they're doing all this rowing. So I figured it'd be a great thing to add into the repertoire. And also at the time I was running a lot. I've always been a big cardio guy, kind of dating back to when I lost the 60 pounds when I was in high school. I did a lot of Stairmaster at the time, and then moving on to a smaller gym, we didn't have any Stairmasters, so I did a lot of elliptical and I did a lot of running. So I've always enjoyed cardio. I've enjoyed the kind of the piece of it. It's nice to kind of zone out for a period of time and just kind of be to yourself, whether it be with your music, or nowadays I listen to a lot of books or a lot of podcasts or whatever. So that's always been a piece of my training, and but so running, I was running a lot, and it was starting to take a toll on my body. It was starting to take a toll on my lifting as
Yeah.
well. Lifting has always been kind of the number one kind of love of the gym. Has always been lifting, and at the time, I was starting to develop a lot of back issues, a lot of knee issues, things of that nature. So I wanted to find something that I could challenge myself and that I could really kind of hone my skills on, but also something that was easy on the body, something that was easy on the joints. And rowing was absolutely perfect for that. I believe rowing uses something like 86% of the muscles in your body. So it teaches you to use the body as one unit, which is phenomenal. It's not just going to use the lower half like on a bike or just like running. It's using the entire body. And one thing I definitely noticed with rowing is that you can come and have either a hard sprint session or a hard distance session, come back the
Yeah.
next day and do it again.
Yeah.
That's the benefit of both the row and the ski. The ski kind of came into the mix later. But
Mhm.
I absolutely love it. I love the challenge of it. I love that you have the data right in front of you. I love that you can see
Mhm.
your progress, or
Yeah.
sometimes you can see your regression,
Yeah.
and you can
Yeah.
really tell where you're at and if you're doing things properly. And then from there, I got hooked up with you, and then I got hooked up with Rob and Lizzie, and it just
Mhm.
kind of took off from there.
That's super interesting. Did we meet before Rob and Lizzie?
Yeah, so it was around that time that I don't know when Instagram started, but I got an Instagram account around that time, and I remember
Can
I
you
was
hear me?
just
Can you
searching.
can you? I'm sorry. Go ahead. You
Oh,
broke up a little bit. So go ahead.
but it was around that time that I got an Instagram account, and I was kind of scrolling through all the different fitness stuff that we had there, and I was looking up rowing stuff, and you kept popping up. So all of your rowing content kept popping up,
Yeah.
and so I started just copying what you were doing.
Okay.
So very similar to what I do now. You would post videos, and then you'd kind of post your screen from time to time. I don't know how often you would post your screen. It's probably more consistent now than it
Mm.
was back then. I'm not sure,
Right.
but so
For
I would
sure. For
see the
sure.
workouts that you were doing, and I would just copy it. And then eventually, I saw that you were tagging Rob on all of your stuff. So then I started looking
Mm.
at his page, and I realized, either I
Mm.
asked you, or I just kind of realized I
Yeah.
deduced it myself,
Yeah.
is that this person was your coach, and you're getting all your programming from him.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't know how long I was doing his programming without paying for it, but eventually I reached out to him and was like, hey, I've been doing your stuff for a while, and I feel like I should probably start paying for it. So I hired him and Lizzie, and did some sessions with those guys, and really try to hone into. So I continued the programming that I was already doing, since I was ripping it off from you and from him, and so then from there, it was just really honing my technique and honing my skills, and really turning it into not just something that I do to burn some extra calories or just to do some cardio. Now it's like a real activity. It's a
Yeah.
real piece of my training.
Yeah.
It's something that I look forward to every single day, or sometimes I dread, depending
Yeah.
on what the session is. But every day is a different challenge, and that's the beauty of it too, is that you can really challenge yourself no matter where you're at, whether you're just getting started today or you've been training for 20, 30 years. It doesn't
Oh
matter.
yeah.
It's all about how you push yourself and how you challenge yourself within those sessions, and there's no limit to where you can go. There's no
Right.
end point when it comes to these pieces.
That's
So
right.
that's what I love about it.
Good. I mean, it's man, it's super super challenging. Every time I feel like I have like a great stroke and great rhythm, and you would think by now I should, right? But you fall back into negative patterns, and yeah, of course, a bit obsessed with having a good, clean stroke and doing it well. And we know when you can do that for an extended period of time, the split is wonderful. So, yeah, I've had so much fun doing it. And as you said, it's forgiving on your joints. But as you were saying, it's forgiving on your joints, I was thinking it's really not forgiving on my heart. It's like sometimes I get up from there and I go, man, I feel like I saw the other side today. Like that
Oh
was
yeah.
brutal. you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But also the work capacity in the basic conditioning that you've developed, it's certainly advanced, but it'd be nice to crack people open and see like what has happened. And I know you can see it with the heart rate and the numbers and the VO2 max, but and the HRV, but it's really next level. It's next
Oh,
level. I've gone out on to play with some of our body architects are younger, and they were playing 3-on-3 full court basketball. So I go out there to play with them, and I haven't played basketball in 10 years. And I was running right up and down with them, and I felt amazing. Now, my
yeah.
joints suffered miserably, but I felt good running up and down the court. And I thought
Right.
that was extraordinary, right? I mean, it really was. When people look at rowing, I don't think they understand how strategic, systematic, and how technical it is, right?
Oh, technique is absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Once you figure out how to have proper technique, and once you learn the technical aspects of rowing and the skiing, that's when your progress really starts to take off.
Yeah.
That's when you really start to see not only see the changes on the screen, but also just see the changes in your performance and how you feel, and you really learn where you're at within a certain workout, and you learn how to either push yourself because okay, I have 200 meters left, I can go now, or you
Right,
learn
right, right.
how to hold back and kind of hold just behind that line for as long as you can before you start to take off. There's just so much to it if you want to do it that way, if you want to take it to that extent. If you don't want to take it to that extent and you just want to use it for a great workout, that's awesome too. But you can go as deep as you want and get as technical as you want with it, and that's what I really enjoy. And I'm nowhere near the most technical guy out there, and I'm just scratching the surface of what's possible. So I'm excited to continue on with this.
Oh, you're an awesome rower. I mean, you're an awesome rower. But people don't know this, but I'm just going to come out and say it. It's much easier for me to row because Curt always does the pieces first. and he's going to be up before me because he's on the West Coast. So, but I'll tell you something interesting. Many times I won't even look, and just for whatever reason, we are in sync to do the same pieces. And that goes for choosing a row or a ski. And that's with me not even looking. And I go, I can't believe he did this one today.
Right.
His mind is exactly in the same place. Because you know what it's like if you row once or twice, you don't want to row again. You gotta go to the ski, right?
Yep.
So it's wild, but I'm telling you, it's a very interesting thing that we are so in sync to what we do. And of course, because Curt's a great athlete and he pushes, I get to see, all right, let me try to do my best and try to beat these times, right? I mean, you push yourself, you really push yourself, and that's a testament to who you are. So, and you are a great rower. Do you prefer rowing to skierg?
I do. The ski is. I don't know how long I've been doing the ski for. It's probably been a few, 3-4 years now, something like that. Maybe a little bit longer. I'm not sure, but that piece is brutal. I'm glad that that the way that our program is laid out, that there are four. Typically, on any given week, there are 4 rows and usually 2 skis. That sometimes that fluctuates into 3 different ski workouts. But the ski is rough. I don't know. If you ask me to do a 2K row or a 2K ski, I will take the 2K row any day of the week, and 2K rows are miserable.
That's saying a lot. That's saying a lot, really.
That is saying a lot. Saying a lot. It's just, I don't know what it is. Maybe my technique isn't that great on the ski, but once you get to that point where you're just pushing as hard as you can on the ski, just my whole body just shuts down. And there's plenty of workouts where I get done with it, I take that last stroke and I just fall over, and it is much more. It's just as much, if not more, of a mental challenge than it is a physical one. Especially when you've experienced certain things before. For example, on a row, a pretty staple workout on the row is going to be 6x500 with a 1 minute rest. And that was,
by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that was going to be one of my questions. But we'll talk about your favorites. But the 6x500, we both know is something that is not a cakewalk. Like you look
No.
it in the face and you're like, all right, this is going to be hard.
Yeah, yeah. I
Good.
mean, if you don't know what you're doing, if you're just rowing casually, you look at that, you're like 3,000 meters. That's whatever. That's not a big deal. But if you treat it the way you're supposed to treat it, and you're supposed to treat it as kind of a benchmark as to where your 2K is going to lie,
Right.
it is brutal. It is brutal. It's going to be hard from the second you start all the way until the end. That's the way the ski is for me more often than the row. Maybe eventually I'll get there, but you talk about chasing numbers, trying to chase you down on, it's hard enough to chase you down on the row, but chasing you down on the ski, you are light years ahead of me on the ski. And I feel like you take these quantum leaps from time to time where like, I'm just getting close to where you are. And then boom, you just take this, this big jump ahead. Like it's frustrating, but it's motivating at the same time. Like, okay, this is what he's doing now. I got to step my game up.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Thank you. But it works both ways. Sometimes I think like, it's just a workout. But at the same time, I give it a lot of thought. I think, all right, if you're doing, call it 7 or 8 or even 10 by 300 with a minute rest, like right now what you could start off at. But one day I was doing it and I said, I finished, maybe number 7 was like, I don't know, I'm just guessing, but let's say 7 was like a 132, right? And I was thinking, if I'm warmed up properly, I could probably start at a 132. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't want to use all those sets to get into the workout. I said, I got to really warm up properly so I can hit it. And then we all know the first one's the hardest, and then you can hit the rest, right? So I just wanted to figure out, like, there were certain days where, like, all right, I'm going to give everything I have. And I think I was going to ask you about this, and this, I guess I'll ask you now, is a huge piece of the Concept 2 training is strategizing fuel economy. So knowing what you're going to start the first split off at, because people are like, I don't know how you negative split. I said, look, I know if I hit this, I can at least negative split by 0.1, right?
Yeah.
And that's my goal. What I don't want to see is a 145 and like a 137. Like that's, to me, I can't do that. I need to see if it's a 139, a 137, a 136, a 135, and kind of go down the line. But how do you strategize, and how would you explain it to a beginner, the concept of negative splitting and making sure that they don't die? Because they initially go, okay, Mark, so I'm going to dog the first one, right? And I go, no, you're not dogging anything. That's not how you improve your basic conditioning. So how would you explain it to them?
Well, the first thing that I would recommend is getting with a really good coach that knows what they're doing. They know how to program, right? So that's one of the benefits of the program that we have, is that not only do we have our workouts laid out for us, but we also have kind of our baseline where we're supposed to start laid out for us. And it's laid out by professionals that know exactly what they're doing, and they know exactly what we're capable of. So that's what I would say to a beginner. That's what I would say to somebody, is to get hooked up with somebody that knows all the ins and outs of that. Because to somebody that doesn't know what we do, everything that we do is predicated off of our 2K times. So all of our splits it starts off with that 2K split that we have, and then from there, any given workout is going to be 2K plus 5, 2K minus 3, whatever it might be. So that's a good place to start. But that might be a little too technical for some people. But the strategizing for me kind of starts the night before, and like you said, a lot of my training in general, whether it be Concept 2 training or strength training, I train by feel. If I wake up in the morning and I'm not feeling a certain way, if I'm thinking the night before that I'm going to go with a hard sprint session, but I wake up in the morning and for whatever reason I'm just not feeling it, I can easily pivot to a distance session. So number one, having the flexibility to be able to pivot to do something different, I think that's very important. And I think that's something that comes over time, that comes with learning how your programs work and just learning your systems and everything else. But there's also a time and place for grinding your way through something you don't want to do also. So I don't want to diminish that concept as well. So you don't always have to pivot. But it really depends on how you feel. But in terms of negative splitting and making sure that you don't, burn yourself out. So you and I talked about this, I think maybe a week or two ago when I was noticing I tried to do what you do, which is start where I think my split is going to finish at and just maintain that rather than
Right.
starting high, ending low, and then my average is here in the middle. That's what I normally do. And to your point, the reason why I normally do that is because my mornings are so compressed that I don't have the time for a super elaborate warm up. My warm up is typically 1,000 meters. I kind of cycle through different stroke rates within that 1,000 meters, and that's usually what it is on most days. And another part of my warm up is cleaning the gym when I get there, but that's the first warm up. The second warm up is getting going on the rower. So it's hard. It's easier to do it my way than to do it your way for sure. My way is starting at a level where I know I can kind of comfortably get there. I'm still pushing, and then I slowly taper down. So how do I do that? I have a general idea. I've been doing this long enough to where I know this is where I'm going to finish, and I kind of work my way backwards from there. I also use the split recommendations that Rob and Liz send over. That I kind of use that as my starting point. So once again, that's to my point of getting hooked up with a great coach. It makes a massive amount of difference, because if you don't know what you're doing and you just go as hard as you can right from the beginning, chances are you're going to burn yourself out. And if you're not used to it, it could be discouraging and you're not going to want to row ever again. So learning how to do it properly is very important. It's different than hopping on the elliptical and just kind of mindlessly going. It's very cerebral. I don't, when I'm rowing, I don't watch videos when I'm rowing. I'm very locked into the numbers. I'm just staring at that screen. And to some people, I've had some people tell me, like, how do you do that? That's so boring. And to me, it's not boring. To me, it's constant stimulation. It's constant data of, oh man, that was a bad stroke. Oh, boom, it's reflected right there on the screen for me. Okay, I got to clean that up. Like, I'm constantly thinking about what I'm doing. It's not mindless. So once again, knowing where I'm going to end up and knowing where that baseline is based off of my programming, that's kind of how I get to where I want to go most of the time. But doing what you do is that's kind of the next level for me. And I've been toying around with that. It's just, I know deep down that that's a great way to go. It's a great way to challenge yourself. I need to figure out ways to get better warm-ups in order to do that, because I do exactly what you're talking about. I use the first couple of rounds almost as the tail end of my warm-up, like the more intense end of my warm-up, and then I get going, depending on how many intervals we have in a given piece.
Right. I think now more than ever, like with me, as I get older, like some of these things, I realized maybe about a year ago on some really strenuous pieces, my heart rate was 183.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't, I don't know if it's accurate or not, but I know it's up there, right? Yeah. And it's at least 175, right?
Yeah.
But for a 47-year-old, that's a very high heart rate, right?
Yeah.
So, but I was talking, do you know who Joel Jamieson is?
I know the name. Yeah.
Joel Jamieson is an awesome human being, but he's also at the forefront of like cardiovascular training. He has the 8 Weeks Out program, and spoke to him several times, and I had him on the podcast. But if you could perform that excessive work, I know we all know this, but the reminder is your heart rate should be very low, or much lower, performing more work. We all know that as fitness and wellness professionals. But I was thinking, I need to have a warm-up, not even for my body or the mechanics of the movement, but more specifically for my heart, and make sure that I'm not jolting it, because when I go in, I'm gonna go to the edge of the earth, and I don't want my heart to go, whoa, what's going on here? Are we in a firefight in Afghanistan, right? So I'm like, I need to kind of be prepared for this. But I realized that if I hit it the right way, like I have a system in my head, like I'm going to have 3 super aggressive strokes, then back off 5, and then maybe 3 more. And then I count 4 sets of 20. That's how I numb myself with the numbers. Yep. And as you said, it's proven if you're a data-driven person, a finance person, or a creative person, you're really, it's like, it is stimulation and it's almost entertaining for you because you're watching that number either go up or go down based off such a minuscule piece of the stroke.
Yeah.
And you know, oh man, that was a great stroke, and you see it. Immediate
Yep.
gratification on that screen, right?
Yep.
So it's, you know, D Blaze, David Lazarus, right?
Yeah.
And,
Oh yeah.
yeah, he's a legend and good friend, and he's on in our group. But he'll tell me, he said, yeah, I did 50,000 meters, and I said, how did you do that? He goes, well, I watched Titanic. He says he watched Titanic, and he'll do 5 sets of 20 minutes. And I'm like, man, I tell him, I give him a hard time. I say, I really got to get you a hobby because this is killing me. All these meters are killing me. We have a guy in the gym, actually. He won the Concept 2 meters challenge on the bike erg.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he did like, he was on that bike for 8 hours a day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 8 hours a day. I mean, he's just a machine, and he has the bike at his house, but he does it at the gym. It's wild.
Wow.
It's really
Wow.
wild.
There certainly is a time and place to throw a movie on and to zone out. You know, like I've done marathons on the road before. I've actually done one marathon on the ski, and the marathon on the ski was just nasty. That was brutal. I've done that one time, and I'm only going to do it one time. And I watched most of the what was the Chicago Bulls documentary that came out?
Oh yeah, the
Last Dance. Yeah, I watched most of the Last Dance while I was doing that because I had to distract myself on that one. So there's a time and place for that, but for the most part, you know, if you can stay locked into the numbers, and not only locked into the numbers, but know what you're looking at and know why things are going in a certain direction, whether it be with your stroke rate or whether it be with your split, and understand the connection of, oh, that, like you said, that stroke felt really good. I see it right there. Now I need to replicate that. Or that stroke felt really bad. I can't do that again. You know, that's where you can really start to take it to the next level. And that's for me, that's where it becomes fun. You know, I really enjoy that. There's nothing more gratifying than getting off a really hard session and that having that connection, just that connection to the numbers and to what you're doing. And there's days where just it all clicks, and that those are awesome days. Doesn't happen all the time. You know, in fact, probably more times than not, it doesn't happen. But the times that it does, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and some, you know, the ones that I'm not fearful, but the ones that make me open my eyes are, if it says like this piece is like 15 minutes, I'm like, uh-oh. Like, this is going to be 15 minutes of hell, right?
Yeah.
I think there was, when we did remember a few weeks back, the 2-minute sets went to 45 seconds rest?
Yeah.
I was thinking, this is going to be an absolute nightmare. Tanner came in actually to do it, and I think on the first one he held like a 140. Yeah. I was like, man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I said, either I have been dogging it for 2 years, or he's going to tank out massively, right? And he hit 140, then he went like 143, then he went like 153, and I was thinking, I was like, I hate to see you go through that, I told him, but I was kind of glad you couldn't hold the 140, because if you did, I was like, what am I doing over here, right?
Right.
I mean, it was like, it was brutal. That was a brutal piece. What's your favorite piece that you kind of look forward to doing?
My favorite piece. You know, I like distance sessions. I like low stroke rates. You know, so something like a 10 minutes at a lower stroke rate, 10 minutes at a rate of 20 with, 3 minutes rest, maybe 4 or 5 rounds of that, something like that. It's hard to say what a favorite piece would be because they're all so different, and I like them all for various reasons. I actually really enjoy, as much as it gives me anxiety and it makes me really nervous going into the sessions, I really enjoy the 6x5 minutes with a 1 minute rest because I like seeing where I'm at. So those are always fun ones. But in all honesty, I like the mix, so it's hard to pinpoint any one type of a session that I really get after. I mean, that I really enjoy. I try to get after them all, but for sure. Because the mixture is what makes it so much fun. The monotony of running or something else that's totally eliminated with rowing and skiing, because every session just it has its own challenges within the overall challenge of just what it is that you're doing.
Right.
So I guess
Sure.
it's a bad answer to that, but my answer would be I don't know if I have a single favorite. The mixture is my favorite.
I know I'm going to say this, and it's going to come back to haunt us, but the 30-minute pieces at 20 strokes, or the 30-minute max meters, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. That was
Yeah,
one of the hardest
yeah,
things. I think I pulled like 85-40, and then I said, you know what, I'm going to rest. In 6 months, I'm going to do it again. I did 85-80, and to get those extra 40 meters, it took years off my life. It
yeah.
took years off my life. Really, I thought I was going to die. It was
And if you
brutal.
don't know what you're looking at, to the average person, like all of that work just for a little bit of progress. That little bit of progress is massive. So that's huge. So that's
Yeah.
definitely something that once you learn what you're doing with these pieces, that those little minuscule pieces of progress, the progress is huge in the beginning. I
Yeah.
remember when I
Right.
first
Right. Right.
started
Right.
rowing, I used to do 2Ks like every 2 weeks, like every 2 or 3 weeks I'd do a 2K, and I would take large chunks of time off every single time I would do it. And obviously, doing it that often meant I wasn't actually doing it, because anybody that knows that if you really do a 2K, you don't want to do it that
Yeah.
often, and
That's right.
you're lucky if you
Yeah.
want to do it, once a year or a couple times a year. In fact, the last time I did a serious 2K was a year and a half ago, and I did not PR on it. I failed miserably, and
Yeah.
I haven't done one since. It's probably about time I do one. But just those little, just those couple of seconds, all of that work translated into just a couple of seconds of improvement. It's definitely, to the average person, they might look at that and say, "Wow, that's got to be discouraging, right?" Like, no, that's awesome. It's huge. It's something to be very proud of.
Right. Right.
So that's another part of the Concept 2 training that I really enjoy, is just seeing that progress over time. And it's not always going to be linear. It's not always going to be PRs every single time out. You're going to take steps forward. You're going to take steps backwards. But just the general overall trajectory of progress it's a lot of fun to track.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that's why I love the app. I can watch. By the way, there's a. I love the app. Let me finish that thought. Is because I can look, and people look at the app and they say, "Well, I'm only like 6 seconds behind you." And I go, 6 seconds is like 7 years.
Mm,
That's like 7 years of training to develop
yeah.
your base where you're just hitting it smoothly, right? No, maybe it's not 7 years. It could be 4. It could be 5. Whatever. It depends on your consistency and your effort. But it represents a lot of effort and a lot of training. And I was gonna say about the skier. I taught a class at Anatomy, and we just kind of had a bunch of members in there, and it was an awesome class. They had a lot of fun. And he had a lot of great questions. And one of the questions was, how much easier does it get when you have better form? And the whole point is, like, as you said, it's infinite. It doesn't get easier.
Right.
It's just, you just have tools to hold, right? But you're
Right.
going to suffer miserably. And you have to be somewhat okay with knowing that you are going to suffer miserably to
Yeah.
improve, right? I think people need
It,
to wrap their head around that. Go ahead.
it gets harder as you get better.
Mm-hmm.
As your
Mm-hmm.
technique gets more and more clean, it actually gets harder. As your discipline gets stronger, as your ability to, as you say, suffer through it gets stronger, it actually gets harder, because now you're capable of more.
Right.
If you want to just cap your capability here and then increase your technique, yeah, it's going to feel a lot easier over time. But you can't do that. Once your capabilities go up, your effort level has to go up along with your capabilities, and it actually
Mm,
gets more and more challenging
that's
as you
right.
go. And that's part of the beauty of it.
That's right. 100%. That's very well said. We have a guy at the gym, and we have a nice group now that does the pieces and has a fun time. He's a young man that used to come into the gym, and every time he used to come into the gym, I'd be on the rower and I'd look at him, and it's almost like a couple of times he caught me like staring at him. And one time I said, "Do you want to learn how to row?" And he's like, well, yeah, I row now. I said, yeah, I'd like to show you a few things if you don't mind. I said, you could really be a world-class rower, at least indoor, because I haven't spent a lot of time on the water. Um, and he said, yeah. So that's Griffin O'Connell. You see him on the app now. He's 6'9", 225 pounds. I mean, he's an absolute monster. I mean, his stroke, I think for like 2 or 3 weeks, I was barely beating him, and he's 24. And and then after he just started ripping it, and I was watching his splits. If I start off like a 138 and whatever the piece was, he'd be like a 136.9, and I'm thinking he started off that way.
Yeah, wow.
So we started cleaning up his stroke just a little bit, and he was crushing numbers. He just started. I mean, don't forget he's 24, but he's a well-trained person in general and has a very solid base of conditioning. He was doing these things. He just wasn't doing them with the great technique or strategically, but he is an awesome rower, and he just started.
Yeah,
he just started. It's wild.
That's amazing. One thing that I have learned over the years, and one thing that I would probably encourage people to understand is comparing yourself to other people is it's a hard thing to avoid, and it's always good to try to challenge yourself and try to chase other people, but especially on the erg, size is such an advantage. We got a guy in our group, Matt Snare, he's a big guy, and he's a big, powerful guy. God. I'll oftentimes compare my numbers to his, or I'll compare my numbers to you, and you're a bigger guy than I am. And size is so, especially length. When it comes to rowing, you see the average, rower, especially the more competitive ones, they're all, typically very tall, and they're all very well-conditioned athletes. But size and strength and power, especially when it comes to sprinting, is just such a massive advantage. Right. So here I am, I'm 195 pounds, and I'm comparing myself to people that are 220 and 230 and just have all this power with everything that they're doing that I just don't have. So if you are going to compare yourself to somebody else numbers wise, just understand what you're looking at. Number one. Number two, it's always great to use those types of things as motivation, but never use it as any type of discouragement, because it's just it's not what it's meant to be for.
Right. And if you are like I weighed in about a week ago, I weighed in at like 201. 2 days ago, I weighed in at 206. But if you're 195 and another person's 205, I mean, 10 pounds does matter. I mean, it matters. Like it's something, right? And I think that's very well said, and that's a good point. And like height, I remember going back and forth on social media with Eric Murray. You know who Eric Murray is?
Yeah.
And he's like one of the greatest rowers, if not the greatest rower that ever lived. And he's legit 6'4", maybe 6'5", and rowed at 240, 245. That's a very strong. And by the way, he started rowing when he was like 11 or 10. So, I mean, that's a very well-developed human being with a lot of power. And I also think, like, if you're a rower, it's very different from being a rower and doing some lifting on the side, right? I'm by my indoc or my introduction to fitness and wellness is through weightlifting. So I've always been a weightlifter, and then I started rowing. So I have, like when I'm watching you guys with like drag factors, some people row at like 90. Sometimes I row at 170 and feel super comfortable there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a very different thing. And you're a weightlifter and you train all the time with weights. What's your weightlifting like?
It changes over time, but it's typically bodybuilding-esque, the typical bodybuilding splits, back and bis, chest and tris, or isolated body parts, that type of thing. But much the same as you, where that's my base, that's my foundation is lifting, and then I row on top of that. Now, I prioritize the rowing first in my workout because I don't want the weights to affect my rowing performance. And that's just the phase that I'm at right now, and it changes. Sometimes I row after I lift because I'm in a particular mode where, I'm prioritizing the weights and I don't mind if it affects my rowing. So there are times and places for all different types of training, but for me, like I said earlier, that it's all about the consistency of it. That's what makes the biggest difference. It's there's nothing special with the way that I train, the way that I weightlift. It's all very basic stuff. In fact, it's probably too basic. But knock on wood, I haven't had any major injuries in 20 plus years of weight training. So it's been working to that degree. But it's all just very basic bodybuilding type stuff. Different rep ranges, different sets, different angles, all that type of thing.
Okay, awesome. And by the way, reverse hyper. I noticed, were you always a reverse hyper guy, or did you start incorporating that later on?
I started incorporating that later on, and one of the main reasons I started incorporating that was I saw you doing it, and I started talking to you about it, and I believe that you used it for lower back stuff. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It helped me tremendously.
Yeah. So I've always kind of suffered off and on. Like there was a time where I was trying to deadlift 500 pounds, and I was also training for a marathon at the same time, which it was.
You told me that. You told me that once. Yeah.
That was a stupid combination. So that little phase of training, I feel like did so much damage to my back because I was probably so burnt out from all the running that my deadlift form was just terrible. I really don't know. If I probably took a step back and analyzed it, that's probably what it was.
Right.
Wound up accomplishing both of them. That was great, but it did a lot of damage to my back. So I always had kind of some chronic back issues from that point on. I would be fine for a little while, and then something would happen where my back would just go out, and I'd be kind of screwed for a week or two. Work my way back into it, feel good for a couple weeks, and boom, it would happen again. So I was just looking for all the different types of things to really help rehab my back. The reverse hyper is definitely one that helps a ton. I do that twice a week, and then. Also, hip thrusts is another big one. So for me personally, with my back issues, developing that glute and hamstring strength was just crucial to protecting my lower back, and also doing things to kind of isolate my lower back as well. But those are the two main key components to developing strength in my lower back. And I have little twinges here and there, but nothing like it used to be. So it's been a great addition to my training for sure, and I would definitely recommend it to anybody in general, but specifically if you got back issues. The reverse hyper and hip thrusts are two pieces that are must-haves in your program for sure.
Awesome. Also, I remember, I forgot about this, but every once in a while, like my back will bother me, and I know that's a part of. I have like a severe scoliotic curve, but I also, a back injury ended my career. So I feel it every once in a while. But I remember when I started rowing, I had back pain where I could not stand still. I was side to side, stretching and doing all these things. I mean, I was in awful pain. And then I did a rowing piece. And in the middle of the day, I realized I don't have any back pain anymore.
Yeah.
Now, I know everyone's a little bit different, but I think I was a bit locked into a extension or hyperextended position, and because I was doing a little bit of protraction and hinging forward and allowing my body, and I know it's not standard, but allowing my body to practice both like protraction, retraction, like flexion, extension, just working through it and probably getting blood flow, I felt amazing.
Yeah.
Because it was very specific, and it wasn't exactly 10 reps, right? It was like a lot of reps of it. So it really helped me tremendously, and I'll never forget that. People thought rowing's going to be terrible for your back. In fact, it strengthened my glutes, my hamstrings, my lower back, my rhomboids, my scapulothoracic area, everything, and I felt great.
Oh, absolutely. And also engaging your core as well.
That's right. That's right.
When I get done with a really hard row, whether it be hard sprints or a really hard ski, I'm feeling it more here, just as much here that I'm feeling it anywhere else. and engaging your core to that level is also going to be another great way to protect that lower back.
That's right.
On the flip side, I can always tell when I'm going too hard. I can always tell when my form is not optimal, because I'll stand up and sometimes I'll feel it in that lower back as well too. So once again, kind of going back to that instant feedback. Sometimes I'll get done with something and especially I really don't, going back to pieces that we like. I'll tell you a piece that I don't like. I don't like really hard short sprints. I don't like hundreds or 150s. Where you're just meant to go all out all the time. I can't remember what the competition was, but I think it was either a road royalty or something along those lines, where all of the workouts of the competition was all just short
Sprints.
short sprints, and I just felt destroyed after every single workout. Because you got to get that split down, because you're going up against these guys that are going to be just these sprint monsters that can sprint 100 at 110, to which I can't come anywhere near that. So you have to get those numbers down in a competition. You have to kind of let the form go a little bit, and that's just it wasn't good on my body at all. So those are the types of workouts I don't like, where I start to lose control over what it is that I'm doing. That's going back to what I really appreciate about the concept pieces in general is that once you learn to control the movements, it's just so effective. And really utilizing that body in one motion, one unit, and everything working together. It's just so awesome. But once you start to lose that, it can definitely have some detrimental effects. So I definitely don't like going into that type of a mode.
Okay, fair enough. I feel the same way. I mean, so I'll message with Matt Snare, and I'm like, he's a savage of a human being. He's a large person, and he's very strong, right? So he could own those sprints all day, and it works both ways. Like, I feel like in the NFL we have a thing called a tweener. So you're not quite big enough to be a defensive end, but you're like a little bit like an outside linebacker. I'm like a tweener, so I have a little bit of sprint capacity of power, but I'm a little bit better at the endurance, and it's better for me if the fight is extended. If it's super short, I can only get so far. And now, if you put me on the rower when I was 265 pounds and I was a power athlete, that would have been fun. But I don't know. Like I probably wouldn't have been able to do the endurance stuff. So I feel you with that. You need weight, you need power, and that's a very specific skill set. So Curt, you've also adapted the more recovery tools. I see you getting in the cold plunge now. What else? Tell me about the cold plunge experience, and then tell me about what else you're doing for recovery and how you handle that. So you're training with weights how many days a week, and how many days a week are you doing the Concept 2 stuff?
So I train with weights 6 days a week. Typically, like right now, I'm doing just one body part a day, and I'll hit legs twice a week typically. And I do something on the Concept every single day. So whether it's a longer, slower recovery piece, like I typically reserve that for Sundays, and I hit our prescribed workouts Monday through Saturday. So I'm doing something every single day, and that doesn't. So somebody might hear that and they might say that that's overtraining or whatever, and maybe that might be true. I tend to believe that there's no such thing as overtraining. I think that there's such a thing as under recovering, and I do fall into that category as well with the amount of sleep that I get. But I feel like I make up for that with other things that I do, whether it be cold plunge, stick mobility. My nutrition is very important, hydration, all those types of things. So it's not perfect by any means, but it's what works for me. I always feel like I have a certain amount of energy that I have to kind of get out every single day, So, and if I'm not able to get that out, I'm just I'm not the best version of myself that I could be, whether it be for myself or for my family, So, taking care of these things, I think is very important to not only my own fitness, but also just for me to be the best version of myself for everybody else around me. I think it's very important.
Okay.
In terms of what I do for recovery, stick mobility is definitely one big one that I use, and I've been using that for a long time. You know, those big long orange sticks. I don't know if you have those at your gym or not, if you've seen those before, but it's kind of like a PVC pipe with a
Yeah.
little bit more pliability, so that you're able to kind of contort your body into different stretching positions that you're just not able to access on your own. So that's been a great tool in terms of just getting the blood flowing and also just getting more mobility and stretching. Ice baths has been something that I've been incorporating recently. So I got an ice pod for Christmas, and I've done it every single day since Christmas.
Oh, cool.
And I've kind of played around with different methods on how to utilize it. When I first got it, I utilized it as kind of like a midday pick-me-up, you know? So I would do my normal thing in the morning. I would get home, and I would have a certain amount of time before I had to pick up the girls from school. So I would typically do it kind of midday there. And the dopamine hit is amazing, you know? So it would definitely...
It's the best.
Yeah,
The best.
yeah. So it eliminated a certain amount of caffeine that I usually would have at that middle part of the day.
Wow.
And it even eliminated, every now and then I would take a nap every now and then in the middle of the day, and eliminated all of that as well. So that was great. But then I kind of shifted around. I started listening to more content, and I can't remember the guy's name. He was on your podcast a little while ago, and he was talking about utilizing...
Thomas Seeger.
Yeah. And he was talking about utilizing it pre-workout and the hormonal benefits of that, and how it actually can increase testosterone and things along that level. So I started utilizing that first thing in the morning. So that's part of the reason why I wake up so early. So I wake up at 1:45. I'm typically hitting that cold plunge by about 1:55, and then I'm hitting the door by about 2:05. So I'm hitting it. I'm going 36 degrees for about 3 or 4 minutes first thing in the morning. Once again, that dopamine hit, just shocking the system, especially when you're only just a few minutes removed from sleeping. It's there's no better way to wake up. Number one. Number two, the mental benefits of doing something that terrible first thing in the morning. It's actually beneficial for me to place it in a time of day where I don't have any option to stall. I can't think about it. Point. I have to just get in there and do it because I have to get moving with my morning. So I don't have any choice. I just have to jump in there and I just have to do it. But it just gets everything just going right away, and then I get to the gym and I'm ready to go. So utilizing that first thing in the morning has been awesome, and it's part of the reason why I'm able to get up and get going as early as I do. It's been an incredible tool. And as far as recovery benefits goes, I've kind of played back and forth with where I place it. So sometimes I'll do it post workout where you get some more of those recovery benefits. But the thing is when you utilize it post workout, then it kind of diminishes some of those hormone production. So it's not always advantageous for muscle building, but it is beneficial for recovery from day to day. So like if you're in the middle of a competition or something like that, there's obviously you're not building muscle when you're in the middle of a competition. So recovering, doing it post workout, recovering from session to session, that works out well there. So I'll usually use it for recovery purposes on a Sunday. So I'll do a post workout on a Sunday. Sit in there. I'll go maybe not quite as cold, but I'll go for a longer duration. And that's another thing too, is you get to a point where you get used to bad conditions. So doing it first thing as cold as possible, that sucks. So doing it post workout when your body's hot, it's almost like a treat.
It's cheating. It's cheating. It's definitely cheating.
Yeah. It feels too good. Like it's not nearly as difficult. So if you can get yourself and this applies to a lot of different areas in life, but if you can get yourself used to the worst conditions, then moving on to normal conditions feels like a piece of cake, So if you can apply that principle to as many different things as possible, then you're going to have no problem succeeding in a lot of different areas.
Absolutely. Are you doing any sauna? And by the way, what Curt was referencing, I'm sorry to go back, but Thomas Seeger, I had him on the podcast previously. He's the guy that Joe Rogan spoke about. He kind of, there was a Japanese study. he discovered the Japanese study, or didn't discover, read it, and then started to implement before his training, and it fixed his testosterone. I mean, his testosterone went through the roof. It went from like 300 to like 800 or 900, and it fixed his PSA number perfectly, right? And he feels like he's in incredible health. And he said he was doing the cold plunge first, and then he would lift weights. And he said, I'm not killing it with weights. I'm only lifting weights for 20, 30 minutes max, and I'm not like a savage warrior, but that's all it took. So if you want to hear more about that, you can tune into Thomas Seeger on the podcast. But Curt, are you doing any sauna?
Nope, I don't. So I don't have access to that. I don't have one at the house, or I don't belong to a gym that has that. So that's one thing that I haven't really explored too much in.
Okay, understood. Well, I know I've monopolized your time forever, and I can't thank you enough for making time for me on the weekend. But one thing I want to ask you, I always ask a few questions at the end. My first question would be, what advice would you give to an up-and-coming trainer who's starting off in the field, and it's really important that they establish themselves and they want to be relevant, and they need some advice from a veteran trainer, and you're going to give them some advice? What advice would you give them?
That's a great question. The number one thing that I tell all young trainers, and I have a lot of them that apply at my gym, and I will push them away if I feel like they're not ready for my situation for running your own business. But the one thing that I tell everybody is it's very important, I feel, to start in a big box gym or a corporate gym or a gym that has access to a lot of people, has access to a lot of managers, has access to a lot of mentors, has access to a lot of other trainers. And take the time to learn the business and really figure out what works best for you, and also figure out your style when it comes to sales, when it comes to interacting with people. This is a very difficult industry, and it's something that I didn't give enough respect to when I first started. In fact, about 6 months in, I had like 2 clients maybe 6 months in, and I was about ready to quit because it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Because even at a corporate gym, you're still running your own business within their walls. They have access to more things. And luckily for me, I had a manager that was really hard on me. He saw a lot of potential in me, but he was also really hard on me. It was something that I definitely needed at the time because I was not working as hard as I could, and I was not doing all the things necessary to evolve and to really learn the business. I kind of thought that, okay, I'm a trainer now, and the management staff is going to hand me these clients, and I'm just going to train them, and that's the way it's going to go. And it doesn't go that way. No. You have to learn how to sell. If you're not good at sales, if you're not good at interacting with people, which me, I'm more on the introverted side for sure. I had a really hard time with all that stuff, so it took me a long time to learn. You could be the best trainer in the world if you're not very good at talking to people, and if you're not good at making sales, nobody will ever know it. Because that's how you gain access to people, is you have to learn how to sell. And that's just the reality of the business, So you have to put yourself in a position where you have access to people that have been doing it for a longer period of time than you have, that have been through all the ups and downs that this industry has to bring. But also the access to people is extremely important. For example, my gym, I have about 400 members, give or take. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of people, whereas versus the Lifetime that I started off at, I believe at the time had 5,000 members, and probably has a lot more now. Right. So my ability to get in front of people and to fail over and over and over and over and over again is what allowed me to figure things out. Whereas at a smaller gym, those opportunities are going to be fewer and further between. So you need to. I tell everybody, as much as we don't want to go the hard, long route, as much as we want to run our own businesses, and as much as we don't want to work for large companies and corporations, I think you have to do it for a period of time, and you have to learn the business. And then once you learn the business, then you can go off on your own, do your own thing, create your own path. But to try to start off from that point, I think is a mistake.
Understood. Okay, thank you so much. That's great advice, certainly. So take that advice in, anyone who's listening and starting off in the field. The second would be, I know it's a little personal, I hope you don't mind, but your daughters, you would like them to, there's one thing you'd like them to learn over the course of their youth, working from being a young woman to adulthood, what's most important to you that they kind of take on or take from you?
I think work ethic. I think work ethic is the number one thing that I want to instill in my kids, and that's probably the number one thing that was instilled in me as a youth. My dad was an incredibly hard worker. He carried 2 jobs all throughout my childhood, and I used to go to work with him. So he worked at a store called Firestone, which is an auto body shop, and he would go there in the evenings. He would work his day job all day long, and then he would go to his second job and work, from 5 to 8 in the evenings every single night. So I don't really remember him ever telling me hard work is important, and also I don't remember him telling me that hard work is a key component of what he does on a daily basis. But I remember he just showed me by example, and being that leader by example. That's something that I feel like has been instilled in me. I'm not a big talker. I'm not a big rah-rah person. I'm not going to be the one that's going to give you the best inspirational speech. That's why I post inspirational videos every morning. I'd rather somebody else do it than me. But I've developed more into a leader by example, and I'm not always going to tell you the best things, but I'm going to try to show you. And then that's one thing that I would really love to pass on to my girls, and I hope that they're observing, through the hard work that I put in, and also their mom, Ashley, that the hard work that she puts in every single day. Is I really hope that they're observing that that's just so important, and that bleeds into every single element of your life, whether it be athletically or academically, friendships, relationships, family, everything else. It all takes work. It all takes diligent, hard work every single day, and it's not easy, and it's difficult to do. But if you're willing to put in that work, then you're going to be on the path to whatever success looks like for you, or whatever success looks like for them. So that's the number one thing that I want to instill with them is a work ethic, and is to just always try their very best, and to do the best that they possibly can in any element of their life.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. That's amazing advice. And I think if your girls are half of what you are, they'll be extraordinary workers. So I think that they have no choice, but when they're seeing it each and every day and they see it with great consistency, that's the most important thing in the world. There's actually a speech on online on YouTube about a gentleman that said, my father never told me to work hard. I would see him leave at like 3:30 in the morning every day, and I just knew that he wasn't doing it because it was fun or it was great. I mean, there are still people that will try to minimize. Well, Curt's a fool. He wakes up at 1:45. Marc's a fool. He wakes up at 3:30, whatever time. It's like there's something behind it. It's just the amount of consistency that you're trying to build up in your life. That doesn't mean that everyone has to wake up at that time. We're not applauding the time, we're applauding the consistency. And I think that's really important. And I think that's teaching a very powerful lesson. And you're certainly doing that with your family and with your daughters. So kudos to you. And I can't thank you enough for being on and spending all this time with me. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I wish you a lot of luck in your business. I'm going to continue to try to chase your numbers and push myself. I'm going to keep pushing myself because we have a great group of people with yourself, Matt, Snare, Griff, Zach, David Lazarus, Tanner jumps in there every once in a while. There's a lot of fun people in there. Rob and Lizzie are amazing. And I'm just grateful to be around great people. And it's fun. I say I don't even really know these people, but I do, right? Because I see their numbers and I get a feeling from them. And you know what? I mean, it's amazing how you could be around someone every day and they could be negative and not positive, but yet someone like you, I mean, we connect in the morning after the piece and I'm like, this guy's in Minnesota, but I feel like I'm doing it with him, So it's huge. So thank you.
Well, thank you. The camaraderie there is appreciated, and it's very important, and kind of to something that I think that you're kind of alluding to right there is starting your day, challenging yourself, but also starting your day on a positive note. I think is just so important. That's part of the reason why I put all of that that work in on the front end of my day. Is that it's at a time of the day where nothing else can get in the way, So I'm not gonna be disrupted. I'm able to get it in, but also having that win first thing in the morning and starting the day off on a positive note, and interacting with everybody on our team is definitely a big part of that, and it's something that I really enjoy, and it's a special thing for sure.
It's a lot of fun. Curt, thank you so much. Please give my best to your family and have an amazing weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You too.